Why arsenic, mercury, lead and cadmium? These are the most common heavy metals that cause adverse effects even at low doses. Also, we are going to consider to some details because there are many similarities actually, not only in relation to these heavy metals, but sometimes people have pollution in their bodies due to radioactive metals. Let's say cesium, as after Ukrainian disaster, Chernobyl disaster, uranium and some others. So the question that we are going to consider in this video, that I'm going to consider in this video, how to detox from toxic heavy metals. And there are two major methods that we are going to discuss. One of them would be physical exercise with sweat, and another one is diet. In more details, of course, we have to look into such question is how to sweat and which substances from diet are going to be particularly beneficial for chelation or removal of heavy metals from the human body. Another question we are going to consider is following: can breath retraining or the Buteyko method protect from or eliminate heavy metals from the body? And that's actually very heavy, very difficult question, very complex question, because there is no simple answer to that. I'm going to discuss details of this question later, especially in the part 2. So before starting part 1, which is again going to be on YouTube, I'm going to tell you my own personal story, and this also explains my kind of personal heavy involvement in understanding of mercury. Why? Because in December of 2019, I finally discovered the root of my numerous serious physical, emotional and cognitive problems that suddenly started in 1998, so like more than 21 years ago, before the time when I discovered what was the cause. So for more than 20 years actually I did not know what I'm dealing with, because I had many abnormalities. And what was found in December of 2019, I did a hair analysis test, and that was by recommendation or even like insistence from one alternative health doctor whom I visited. I made him a video, Arkady Prokop, on this YouTube channel, like one of the leading experts in intermittent hypoxic hyperoxic training. He actually insisted that I have to cut. He basically came and cut my hairs himself and sent them to the German laboratory. I paid €100 for this test. And the results, when the results came, you can see the slides, the image here, that my heavy metal load was, as this German laboratory showed, was 10 times higher above the upper limit. And that explained again my numerous chronic problems. I had, for example, from 98 until 2020, chronic liver failure problems, severe problems like jaundice and insufficient liver enzymes, and taking biles, salts to digest fats for many, many years. Eventually it became better. Now probably liver is, all the research, all data that I did from ultrasound, from blood tests show that the liver actually is recovered completely. Now I also had kidney problems starting from 2001, and kidney failure, and it's still going on. The kidney recovery, hard to say like how long it's going to take. Plus various chronic digestive problems, gastritis, duodenitis, gastroparesis and many others, which are still present and I am still dealing with. Together with various neurological problems for over 20 years, such as kind of some, I would say I would have probably light form of Alzheimer's disease, which also no one actually can disappear after people eliminate mercury from my body, and I can testify that actually it's very true. I have kind of early stages of Alzheimer's, and certainly understanding and detoxification from mercury helped me a lot, and I'm going to explain what I did in details and give you kind of ideas what can be done in different type of situations. So I thought for a long time like how it was possible that like for so long time I had such a huge lot of mercury. Probably I had up to 30, maybe 40, 50 times above the upper limit long ago, of course, and probably even 10, 15 years ago I had probably 20, 30 times above the upper limit. And I was still able like kind of to do so much work in relation to breathing retraining, Buteyko method, and like I was thinking to myself like how it was possible. What I realized actually, there are kind of two type of nervous processes going on. And some of them could relate to some kind of, I call it structural knowledge. Like let's say when you learn mathematics or geometry, calculus, all this like sciences, you know, you have one building block and then you build up more and more information based on previous structure which is already inside your brain. So that's I call structural knowledge. This is usually something that we learn in school or universities, colleges later in life. And there's another type of information which is also stored in human brain, and that would be memory about past places, past events, past people whom you've seen. And what I realized actually thinking back about all these years, I can certainly say from 1999 until about probably 2-3 years ago, my ability to recall events, to recall people, experiences, places where I stayed sometimes for weeks or months even, was extremely low. I realized that actually my memory probably was about like kind of reduced by the factor about 10. A lot in comparison with years, let's say from 90s, and when I was thinking, let's say, let me go back even to my when I was, what was going on in my life in 1980s, and I still realize that actually I remember events from 1980s, what happened in my life, where I traveled, where I stayed, people I met, faces, names, and so on, way better from past rather than these years from 1999 until about probably about 2020, 2021. Yeah, probably 2021 would be the period. So that would be how many 22 years of life where memory actually was very poor. But Buteyko and other like things when we do have kind of when we build information like my views on society, how the world works, what is going on really in the world changed a lot during this time, and that's also kind of structural knowledge. Whereas again, kind of my memory in relation to events from my personal life was again very low, as I believe due to Mercury. In 2.5 years of more targeted treatment from December 2019 until June 2022, my mercury level in hairs dropped 35 times. So of course I did something more in comparison with what I did before. But by the way, before I was also, of course, I became very fond of extremely heavy exercise to produce a lot of sweat. That was not kind of part of my life before, because previously in 80s and 90s when I even competed in competitions and choosing place to live, I would actually prefer colder places, colder climate, and my sport results and my brain, my well-being, energy levels were always lower when temperature was like 25, 30 degrees or higher. But somehow, after mercury poisoning, I started to crave this colder hotter weathers, even traveling to first probably south parts of United States, later to Mexico for many years, and even later to such countries as Turkey, Bulgaria summertime, and even to Egypt, Morocco, and other places where I could sweat a lot during winter times, because temperatures were somewhere at the level of 25-30 degrees during the day. And that was not the case with me, and I believe mercury was a big thing here. Plus, of course, I developed a huge craving from 99, 2000, and many years later, to eating apples somehow, and later pears. When my digestive system became too sensitive to apples, I could not eat them any longer, so I switched to pears, and that was actually not the some substance that I use. I use something again more kind of professional, something which works way better than ordinary apples, let's say, or pears. Now, the question that I want to ask here, okay, there are these laboratory results, like snapshots that you have seen, because probably some people who will see this video, they don't know me, they don't know like what I'm doing in the Buteyko Method or briefing retraining, about my books, courses, and so on, where I work already, how many, 22 years. and they would be, of course, like curious. Okay, is it like should we trust, for example, these laboratory results? And many like Buteyko community people would also question: is it like if they decide to do the test, is it like a smart way to go? I would say I checked many other laboratories. So this one actually was suggested by Dr. Prokop, medical Dr. Prokop from Las Palmas, Mallorca, and he suggested this particular laboratory. I checked several others. They have about the same prices. There is no laboratory which would check you specifically for mercury. We would generally check you for heavy metals. I think we use some X-ray methods, and this of course makes results to produce such results like takes investment. You need to use very expensive equipment to get these results. And going back to this question, can we trust to this laboratory? I believe absolutely. Why? Because if you look on the first image, you remember like when I had this 2019 result, okay, you can notice there is actually, okay, mercury was 10 times above the norm, but there was another heavy metal which was exactly at the upper limit, and that was silver. And of course, many people would get like, okay, and I myself would get curious, okay, how could I get silver? And then it became very clear for me, because at this time I was using colloidal silver. And what I did there, I'm actually going to show you my order from German Amazon. You can see this German Amazon image. So I had orders of this colloidal silver, which has highest concentration which people can use. And I have this particular order done in July 2019, and that was 1 liter of colloidal silver, very high concentration. I think I was taking about 4 or 5 milliliters a day, so very small amount. And if you can calculate, this amount would be taken during 200 days. So 1 liter, can imagine again, 5 milliliters, that was how much I was taking. So 1000 milliliters divided by 5, you get 200 days. So that was the supply of this bottle, 1 liter bottle of highly concentrated colloidal silver. So if I bought it in July, you can make a math. So in December, I was still taking the maximum kind of safe dose of mercury, because this is what I was trying to do, to take maximum safe dose. And that means exactly, so during this period of time, so my hairs was cut in November 2019, I was taking already for some months, like from July, August, September, October. So you can imagine like more than 4 months maximum dose of colloidal silver, and that was why this lab results showed silver level at the maximum level. So that's why like we can have this result of high silver content in my body. When I got this result, I started to think about, okay, what type of substances can I use? And so I found online that there are many of them which could be used, and for example, one of them is called meso 2,3 dimercaprosuccinic acid, also known as DMSA. Another one, 2,3 dimercapropropane, one sulfonic acid, DMPS, and another one called also EDTA. EDTA also is a food additive. You can find like in many soft drinks. So you can find EDTA as an additive like Coca-Cola and some others, for example. So I also use glutathione and alpha lipoic acid. And you can see images that were showing long ago that it was actually, I was just made images to show that it was exactly substances that I was using. Among those 5, I know that 3 of them have much higher efficiency according to various medical studies done by toxicologists. And at the same time, what is known when we use these kind of chemical substances, they can have very strong side effects. So in my case, like the strongest side effect I got, because using small dose I found was absolutely safe, but as soon as I was trying to use much bigger dose, like a normal dose as it was suggested during chelation protocols, I would get severe, like migraine, headache, like as if like everything was sucked out from my brain, and it was like impossible to read and impossible to do any creative work at all. So therefore I was like really kind of unhappy and was looking for something else in addition to this kind of chemicals, or instead of these chemicals, what else could be used. And side effects, by the way, numerous. They can include many other side effects. You can find them easily online if you are interested. They are variable, they are individual, these effects. And still again, since I could not find for myself a proper chemical, I was looking for the answer, and finally I found a research study where a natural substance was used. And I'm going to explain this substance very shortly in the next part. So we use two methods: physical exercise with sweat or perspiration, and diet. Now, as about physical exercise, that's a relatively simple thing, and basically what we know from research done many decades ago, and there are numerous studies done in 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s of the 20th of the previous century. The studies show that a level of these heavy metals, plus I remember aluminium was also studied in these research papers as well, was in sweat was as high as it was in blood, and some studies I think showed even high concentration of removal in comparison with concentration of these metals in the blood plasma. So therefore it's kind of very simple solution, and sauna and other things seems to be working similarly, probably not exactly to the same degree. I'm going to discuss that more in the professional part, kind of in more details. So diet-wise, there is a natural substance which can be found in many fruits, and you probably have heard about it. It's called pectin. So pectin, many people would think probably apples, pears, maybe some people know that citrus peels have a lot of pectin. And that is very true. So here I'm going to provide like few numbers which you can find, for example, in Wikipedia. So apples have 1 to 1.5% pectin, apricots 1%, cherry 0.4, oranges can be very variable from 0.5 up to 3.5%. Carrots 1.4, so you can imagine like carrots like similar to apples, maybe even a bit better. And citrus peels, that's one which is very high at 30%, and rose hips at about 15%. So, but what I used, I did not use actually citrus peels, I used a substance which is called modified citrus pectin. And it was also used in a clinical trial, which I'm going to explain more in the professional part. But I myself bought this modified citrus pectin on Amazon. You can find it also in North America, in the United States. But in North America it's called Pectasol, and there is a company which is produces this modified citrus pectin in North America, and it was used for clinical trial. But German one is of course for some reasons way cheaper, and I believe chemically it's also very clean, and in relation to technical characteristics like how effective is citrus pectin in comparison with ordinary pectin, that again I'm going to discuss more in the professional part. So, so do you need it? Like, if we take like average Buteyko student, a person who wants to detoxify himself from mercury, or maybe they can have some other heavy metals. It depends. Most people would not have higher concentration, high as a normal concentration of these heavy metals, and therefore probably you don't need modified citrus pectin at all. But if you have high mercury concentration, that's a different story. And then, of course, we need to think what would be the dosages, and that's something which I'm going to discuss again in the professional part as a part of the Buteyko Practitioner Training. Now, in terms of sources, how people can get mercury, most common sources would be people get mercury from eating fish, because fish, any type of fish, probably would be 100 times higher concentration of mercury in comparison with, let's say, with other meat sources, like such as chicken or beef or pork or lamb, so ordinary meats which people buy in shops. And so fish concentration of mercury would be also extremely variable. So it can vary 10 times, sometimes probably more than 100 times, depending on what species and what source you have. Generally, I can show you like this couple of images from Wikipedia. So if you want to have a reference, if you want to look, if you eat fish, you want to see, probably you should be able to find the mercury content of your fish on this particular web page of Wikipedia, which is called Mercury in Fish. So I took here a couple of snapshots from this long table that we have like in the bottom part of this Wikipedia web page, very informative page. And we have here, okay, upper image, you can see here, we have quite kind of a lot of big predator fish, like sharks and tuna fish and cod, because that would be big fish which are again predators, so we eat some other fish, so we are on the top of food chain, and that's why we would have high concentration of mercury. And we are also here going to show you a bottom part of this table, and here we can see such things. Surprisingly, salmon is very low. I read many studies. Salmon is one of the lowest, also of course very popular. So you can see here pollock and some other types of fish, which again sardines and those smaller fish would be also having relatively small concentration of mercury. And there are also, like, let's say, oysters, shrimp and other kind of sea creatures, calmars and octopus and so on. We would have a very low concentration of mercury, probably as like close to, let's say, meat and meat sources that I mentioned before. So for ordinary people, ordinary cases, the solution would be relatively simple. Just sweat every day, as Dr. Buteyko suggested in his 1968 lecture. So it should be norm for every person to have good sweat every day. That's what he wrote. And with physical exercise, and he mentioned a couple of numbers like 4 or 5 hours every day. And so eat an apple or carrot, or if you are on some low carb or ketogenic diet, you can use citrus pills, because they would have, of course, very low concentration of carbohydrates. So now, plus of course, you have to know how to remove mercury. You need to remove mercury if you have it in your mouth, like let's say mercury amalgams. And in the practitioner part, I'm going to explain shortly how it should be done, because not all dentists know about that, unfortunately. Now, and of course, if you eat fish, choose those species of fish which would be having low mercury content. One more kind of note I can make here. I did not study it a lot, but there is another substance which is called alginate. That is from seaweeds. And alginates and modified alginates can also be used. In general, overall, there are at least 3 chemicals, I knew them already for a long time, which are found in seaweeds, and they are effective in chelation of heavy metals. So one of them I already mentioned, alginates, and these are naturally occurred anionic polymers, okay, typically obtained from brown seaweeds. Okay, there's another one called laminarin, and this is a polysaccharide, which also can be found again in seaweeds. And the last one is fucoidan. So fucoidan is also polysaccharide found in the cell walls of many species of brown seaweed. By the way, after Chernobyl disaster, which took place in the Soviet Union, what happened that scientists, research scientists, doctors and toxicologists were actually very concerned about health of thousands of people who get this exposure to radiation and how to reduce the load of this radioactive material. So they tested various techniques, and as a result of that, actually, they decided to develop a substance extract from seaweeds, which is called modifilan. It's quite popular, common around the world. You can buy it on United States Amazon, in other places, countries of the world. So this is basically, I think it's freeze-dried extract from brown seaweeds, which is extracted in the far east of Russia now, again like on the border in those waters between Russia and Japan. So, and deep waters, of course, quite clean areas, you can imagine. So, and this is where they produce this substance, which again also can be used as a part of heavy metal chelation protocol. Now, finally, in this part, I'm going to shortly mention again this question: can breath retraining because the Buteyko method protect us or eliminate heavy metals from the body? So on a simple kind of side, we can say by looking at the long list of 200 diseases, I don't know, many practitioners, probably some advanced students may know, like although there are different versions of this list of diseases, which was produced by Soviet and Russian doctors, actually heavy metals are not included there. So technically speaking, the Buteyko method is not designed and does not address directly presence of heavy metals in the human body. But at the same time, it's obvious that when these chemicals produce damage, and in my case again there was, for example, damage due to liver, definitely breathing retraining is extremely useful, because breathing retraining is able, for example, to eliminate inflammation. And Mercury is particularly known for its ability to create inflammation in cells, because Mercury, the mechanism of its work is it gets into DNA of cells, and what it does next, it starts to send wrong or damaged RNA molecules as a kind of as a controlling center. You can imagine like the controlling center of the whole molecule becomes kind of abnormal, starts working in some kind of accidental order where messages which are sent outside not something which the cells should do, and therefore like the production appearance of inflammation is a kind of normal part of mercury toxicity. So therefore kind of again kind of Buteyko method can help in this area. Plus of course the Buteyko method is able to give us more energy, because when we move high in the Buteyko table of whole zones, we get higher and higher morning CP. So people know it themselves, those who measure morning CP, for example, who practice breathing retraining, they are aware that Buteyko method and breathing retraining is able to give us much more energy and greatly increase our desire and likelihood and likeness of physical exercise. So also better mind, people are able to make better choices and maybe start to think, okay, what is going on with me? How can I detoxify myself from some heavy metal, like mercury in my case? So that would be kind of short answer, but there is also long answer that I'm going to discuss in the practitioner part. So questions which I'm going to discuss in part 2 would be following for Buteyko Practitioner Training. Do various methods of sweating have similar efficiency? For example, passive versus active, or sauna versus physical exercise? So are they equally effective or not? And how much would be the efficiency proportion? Now, next one, how to remove dental amalgams with mercury safely. So next one, dosages of daily MCP intake for various levels of mercury toxicity in hairs. Examples, and I can also even provide an exact formula. So you know your level of mercury, you can find out exact number how much modified citrus pectin you need to take. Next one, what does modification of pectin exactly involve? So the mechanism of action, so pectin versus modified citrus pectin. What is the difference in the ability to chelate heavy metals? Again, I'm going to provide you with numbers, with a number which I'm going to reflect against the efficiency of modified citrus pectin. And that would help us to make calculations. So, for example, how to find the exact equivalent dose of pectin from the known MCP amount. So let's say if you take 5 grams of modified citrus pectin, we can convert it into ordinary pectin, and then we can also convert it, let's say, even to apples or oranges or carrots or citrus peels. So like some people may want to have natural methods without using modified citrus pectin, because I believe that actually it's only for relatively heavy loads. I would say probably when you have, let's say, 2 times the norm maybe and higher levels, then you would need to use kind of more targeted treatment such as modified citrus pectin. Now, and of course, examples of calculations will be given, modified citrus pectin intake to convert in consumption in relation to citrus peels or apples or some other fruits that you like. Now, and last question which I'm going to discuss, how breath retraining with the Buteyko method protect us or eliminate heavy metals from the body in a bit more details. There would be the Buteyko Practitioner Training bonus, such as 4 levels of major cleansing reactions. I don't remember if I discussed it actually this way, but if we think about various cleansing reactions that took place when we retrain our breath, there are actually 4 different, I believe, major levels of cleansing or major cleansing reactions which take place at certain exact levels, and that would help us to understand actually how Buteyko method is able to first protect and then to recover organs, but also able to actually eliminate if there are any traces of heavy metals left, plus to recover organs to basically complete histological or anatomical kind of normal view as we should look like. So that would be question which would be discussed in part 2 of this video.